And then you've got that small percentage of people who think not only that it's not the silver bullet, but that it's possibly like something they need to approach with like a cross and some garlic because it's evil. So there's going to be a little bit of that going on in the background as well.
Welcome, Australia. It's that time again for another podcast from the Mate team, where we try and get into your head with stuff that makes us sound smart. Sit back and relax. It's time for us to be mates.
He's an award-winning journalist who's reported on technology, travel, finance and other topics for over 25 years. Angus appears regularly on Sunrise, Today, The Project, 7 News and other TV and radio shows. His previous jobs include editor of Lifehacker Australia and editor-in-chief of Australian Personal Computer. And he's written for dozens of publications including Escape, Sydney Morning Herald, Gizmodo, The Australian, the AFR, Kotaku, ZDNet and Business Insider. On this podcast, we often talk to entrepreneurs and business people from other industries. But this is a chance for us to get an industry expert's opinion on the state of play of internet in our country and what the growing trends and next big things are for 2021 and beyond. We welcome Angus to the Let's Be Mates podcast. Hey Angus, how are you going?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, Angus, I think the first thing to do, let's introduce yourself to our audience, right? So who you are, what you do, maybe a bit about your career to date and your role at Finder.
Sure. So I'm Angus Kidman. This scares me whenever I say it. I've been a journalist writing about technology and technology-related issues for more than 25 years at this point, which makes me feel honestly really old because I'm now at the position where I'm working with people who weren't actually born when I started doing this job. So,
I know your feeling. I know that feeling.
And that's an interesting challenge. But I think for an area like tech, it's always an exciting area. Things always change. There's always new stuff. And if I think about almost nothing that I was writing about 25 years ago is the thing that I'm writing about now. There's always the new thing that's coming up. There's always the next thing. And that's what I found exciting. So over the course of that career, I started out in print computer magazines with CDs stuck to the cover because that was what people, that was that in the late 90s and the early 2000s. That's what reading about technology and learning about technology was. That was sort of the big point. The internet was only just coming along. Yeah. On the second magazine I worked on, I was the only person who had an internet connection, and everyone was very jealous. Which tells you how rapidly these things can move along. So I spent a bunch of time working on magazines. I then spent a bunch of time as a freelance journalist, kind of writing about any sort of technology I could get my hands on. And then about 5.5 years ago, I joined Finder. And Finder's whole role is to help people compare stuff. Like that's our whole sort of idea, is to help people make better decisions, help them pick out stuff. And technology these days is a huge part of that, whether it's your broadband service, whether it's the phone that you're going to use, whether it's the devices you've got sprinkled around your home. People, they want to make good decisions there. So I came along to Finder. It's grown really rapidly in that time. When I joined, we only had a site in Australia. Now we run in like 80 countries, which is slightly scary when I think about it. So it's been a great opportunity to sort of, bring that knowledge of, how tech works and how people can hopefully make good choices and, apply that on a really broad scale. So, so far so good. And hopefully I'm still doing that in another 25 years, but we'll see.
You might be replaced by a bot at that stage.
Well, there is always that scary possibility that, it's amazing what you can do with automation and all those kind of pieces. At the same time, the human factor is so important in all decisions. And there's always this thing like you can do a lot of research and you can go and find all the stats and facts, but there's also this thing, people are so inclined to trust another human being. Yeah. And you're so likely to believe if your mate just says to you, I use these guys and they're really great, I had this product, it's amazing. That registers with people so much more than any amount of automated kind of recommendation. So I hang on to that I think, people want that kind of human connection. I've just got to provide hopefully a really good one, even for people who I'm not actually mates with. So that's always the challenge.
Well, we always say that choose a telco provider like you can trust like your mate, right? That's the whole purpose of our brand. And we always say there has to be the right balance of automation versus human interaction, right? And I think we've experienced that heavily during COVID, right? Where COVID, people stressed out about working from home, schooling from home, and some people just need to speak to somebody somebody to order their service or to get an answer on their service. That's all they needed for that reassurance. And the good thing is that during the COVID period, we probably beat some of our competitors because you couldn't get in touch with them. And we have our Australian-based call center, which was awesome. And so that worked well. But you make some valid points there. And just from my point of view, like what got you into technology? Why do you love technology so much? What's your passion for? I always ask it, like people always ask me, what's my passion for telco? And I said, well, my view is just the services that we can offer, and what we offer is connectivity to the world, right? Because if you're not connected in some way, shape, or form, you can't do a lot these days, right? And so my opinion is telco especially allows people to connect to the things they love, whether it be TV, whether it be just registering to play sports, etc. What was your first love? What got you into technology?
I actually, way back when I got into it, it was the creativity. It was the fact that it had all these possibilities. And when I started playing around with it as like a primary school kid, and it was, and that was a very specialized thing to be doing then. Like, it was not a subject that was like being taught in schools. So personal computers existed, but they were very kind of specialized. But it was just, you could see the potential, and I was really into, you could program them, you could make them new and different things. Like, they had this kind of infinite potential, and that's only expanded rapidly. In the time I've written about this stuff, that's got broader and broader, because back at that point, you could communicate with people online, but you were plugging in incredibly slow modems and you were chatting with them on bulletin boards. Like, it was a totally different universe. But that sense of, oh wow, this gives me a chance to connect with people and work things out. That was always what excited me about it, that it just had this limitless creative kind of potential, and there were just all these amazing tools. And I think that's what sort of kept me going, even as the tech itself has changed and the things we have to worry about have changed. But there's always been this excitement of, oh, what else can I do with it? And of getting the most out of those devices, of like, no, what are all the things I can do with something? Not just that I've got this. And I think that's what distinguishes someone who's still a true geek like myself from, like, everybody these days, has this massively powerful computer in their pockets in the form of their phones. Everyone's got that. But so many people, they have a set of things they do with it, and that's it. And that's fine. That's all they want from it. There's just a handful of apps that they use. I would always be the person who's like, no, I need to customize this. I need to change this. What other options can I set? How can I make this do more than what I've just discovered that it could do initially? And I think that was what got me initially excited, and it's what keeps me excited, is the fact that there's always going to be all this extra potential for what you can do with whatever that device is. So that's what keeps me going, and that's what still makes me excited every time when I get up and switch my phone on or switch my computer on. It's like, there's all these possibilities that I still haven't realized.
It blows my mind a little bit that my children will not use half the technology that, well, more than half, 99% of the technology that I've had access to in my lifetime, because it's been superseded, right? So looking at, I guess, the last 12 months, what are the big trends that you've seen in tech, and what do you think, what's exciting you in technology over the last 12 months or so?
Well, I mean, the obvious one, we've already touched on this, but there really has been this thing, we hit COVID and that thing of actually collaborating all the time with tech. None of this stuff was new. Video conferencing wasn't new. Using Zoom wasn't new. But the idea that everybody would use them and they would almost become the norm, that is the thing that we've absolutely seen happen, that everybody was like, oh, okay, this is how we're going to operate. And that's been challenging for people. But I think, people have really realized that benefit now. We're sort of coming out in Australia, we're lucky. We're slightly coming out the other side of it now. And people are in the middle of that big debate of, do I go back into an office? Do I need to think about that? And I think that's fascinating. All these people are like previously, I can't wait to get back there. I don't see that so much now. I hear a lot of people like, I think I'd like a mixture of this. I think that's what a few people have got to, that notion of let's mix this up a little bit. But I think that's been that dominant thing of going, oh, right, okay, this is something I can do. But at the same time, then learning, how do you do that well? It's one thing to say, oh, well, I'm going to sit and do all these things sort of, I'm going to do a lot of Zoom calls. That's how it's going to happen. But before long, you realize, how am I going to do a Zoom call and not assume that everybody is actually just not paying attention to me, because they're sitting on Zoom, but they're also sitting typing on Slack, and they're also doing everything else. So I think we always have to, if the technology comes along and we use it, but then we've got to work out, how does that change your culture? How does that change what you're doing? And in the last year, we had lots of people sort of grappling with that of like, how visible do I need to be? And, what's acceptable behavior? Is it okay to go into a meeting with my video on or off? And, all these things that people have had to grapple with. I feel like we've got some answers to those, but I think, we've got another couple of years where people are going to really keep thinking about that. and then trying to work out, maybe if tech can help them with that.
Yeah, and I wonder how tech can help build culture in a business when you're always working remotely. Like, for example, right? I mean, Spotify came out and said that their staff are allowed to work from anywhere and everywhere, right? Whatever they want to do, they can do it. I think the same as Twitter, right? For ongoing as well, and which is great. But I mean, I think the biggest thing that's kept us successful in our business, especially as we've grown, from being small to being big and everything in between, is the culture, right? And I don't know, I find it hard. How do you build culture in a tech company that doesn't see each other or that don't come into the office? And I think that's the next hurdle for people to work out. If somebody works out how do you keep culture with staff working remotely, that's going to be the next $1 million opportunity for people. But I mean, that's the only thing I see with technologies is if you work remotely, how do you keep the culture available in the business? That's the only challenge I see. What do you think?
Yeah. It's a huge. I mean, we at Finder, it was interesting for us because before COVID kicked in, 40% of our team were actually remote at that point. So in a way we were like, okay, we had the infrastructure, we already knew how to deal with that, and we had realized that a really core part of it was you did actually have to spend time connecting with people and doing that. And for a lot of businesses, that can actually be challenging because absolutely. I think they take the view of, this doesn't seem like productive time. Like, there's this notion of, if you're just sitting there, and it feels like you're just having a chat or you're just gossiping, that stuff's actually really important. If you're not going to be in an office and have a chance to have those casual interactions, you have to create spaces where people can do that and where they legitimately feel that's part of their employed time. And I think that's the challenge some businesses have faced. If their metrics are totally just tied to this one thing of, it's that, I'm going to pick on them, somewhere like Amazon, where they're obsessed with how many things you can get through a warehouse in an hour. And I get that's what you need to do is running an Amazon warehouse. But if you actually want your team to feel valued, they need to be spending that time chatting to people. And I think we learned that you could do that by having regular get-togethers, really listening to people, making sure that they participate, that they had a chance to participate and they could contribute in that way. I think that for us had been really, really, that had been valuable and that had been useful. And that didn't require any more tech. It just required a commitment to saying, we are going to spend the time on team building. And so sometimes I think it is just going, that's what we need to do. For a lot of businesses, they didn't get to that for a while because they were just freaked out because they couldn't get into their systems in the first place. And that definitely makes it harder because you have to solve that problem first, but it's not actually the most important problem. The most important problem becomes and especially, I remember I felt really sorry for the first person who came and joined Finder right after we'd all stopped working in the office for a while, because I thought it's one thing to sort of say, I know all these people, but now we're chatting differently. But if it's your first day on the job and you're not leaving your lounge room and you're not going to see these people for 6 months, I think it's hard, and you have to start with acknowledging that it's hard and saying, I've really got to give this person plenty of time to get up to speed on the business, meet everybody, get a feeling for it, not expect all that to happen in half an hour.
Before May, I worked at Microsoft for over 8 years, and one thing my opinion was that the Australian public were slow for the uptake of certain technology, especially cloud-based services like, what they call it now, Microsoft 365, not Office 365, etc. And then what I've experienced during Mate's time, especially during COVID, is that people are now focused on technology. People are now implementing technology, things available wherever they are, wherever they can get it. Cloud-based services, all those things are now the hype. Like, for example, I'm in marketing and things like QR codes just didn't work in point of sale and things like that. But now that everywhere you go, you have to sign in. QR code is now the new in, right? And it's now the new marketing tool. And I've seen prices for QR codes in marketing have gone up from, have been a couple cents to bloody couple of dollars now. And so have you seen that in your world as well?
Yeah, the QR code one is such a good example. And it's like, because one of those things that actually elsewhere in Southeast Asia, QR codes took off several years ago.
Exactly.
Like I'd wander around Singapore and it'd be like, every single ad would have a QR code on it. And Australians just hadn't done it. They're like, oh no, we're not going for that. And you're absolutely right. The thing that drove that was that thing of, now if I'm having to sign in with a QR code every time I want to get a coffee, I'm going to get used to it. And once you realise, I just point my phone and it happens, then you're no longer scared of it anywhere else. I'm not going to hope that. I'm hoping that's not the model that drives us to every technology update that we have, is this notion of things, getting messed up. But it's definitely been the case. And we saw it, outside of the workspace, we definitely saw this happening in terms of streaming entertainment. That absolutely went ballistic last year. And we see that in Finder surveys that 85% of people stream TV now. Like, it's become the sort of normal thing. Everyone's recognised, oh, that's what I'm going to watch. And you can see that, and you can see that parallel in the fact that, you know, ratings for free-to-air television and things that are live are just continuously on the decline, because everyone's gone, why should I just watch what the network thinks I want to watch at this time? I'm going to watch what I feel like watching at the moment I want to watch it. So I think there's a parallel there, and it happened for the same reason. Everyone was at home. But again, once everyone sort of realises, oh, this is great, these are some good options, they kind of dive in. And so sometimes it happens almost by mistake. We saw this huge jump in the people who are watching Amazon Prime Video, which was kind of the number 3 or number 4 service for the most part. Everyone in Australia has sort of had Netflix. A lot of people had Stan. Amazon Prime hadn't been doing that well, and it had this massive takeoff because people just started paying for Prime to get free shipping. Yeah. And once they got free shipping, then they'd realise, they get a couple of nudges saying, hey, there's all this video you can watch. And so they've had this sort of massive uptake, which wasn't driven by the shows necessarily, but it's like, hey, it's there. So it's interesting, you get those sort of sideways benefits, that it's not the main thing you thought was going to work, and yet somehow that actually drives people to use things in a totally different way. I'm sure we're going to see more versions of that, tying back to that thing of people working out, oh, this device I've got can actually do something else. Because I do think, there's a level of curiosity that maybe doesn't exist when technology is ubiquitous. Everyone just goes, oh, it's there and it's fine, and I think I know how it works. But actually, you don't try and teach people how it works. You know, decades back when I went to school, like if you're doing computers, you actually sat down and studied them and worked out how to do it. No one would do that as a subject now. They just say, go to school, you've got a computer, you'll know how to use it. So there's probably, I think maybe we'll spin back a bit to go, there's some value in educating people and explaining them how to get the most out of these things, not just assuming that you know and that you'll be fine, and you don't sort of really need to find out a bit more about it.
100%. Seeing my dad, my 7-year-old dad, Chromecasting everything now, that's the new norm, right? So yeah.
And we've really seen, like, especially during COVID, across our network data, you can see a real change in internet usage. Obviously, things like video conferencing and that from working from home, but streaming's just gone through the roof as well. But I think it's an interesting point you said about education, because I think one of the big next steps that I see is around the connected home, and I still think there's a big education piece there, and there's you almost have to decide which ecosystem you're going to choose. Is it Apple or Google or Amazon? What are you seeing on your end around the connected home and those devices in your home now?
Yeah, it's definitely it's the next stage that this goes through, because everyone goes, oh, well, I've got a few of these things going on. And say, you can treat something like a Chromecast or an Apple TV. That's like your gateway drug. Like, that just solves one little problem for you, which very often that problem is, right, I want to watch something on this rather large television that I now have in my lounge room. Once you've got that, then you start going, what else can I do? It is, I think, the limitation for this stuff is the fact that it's so ecosystem dependent. Yeah, these toys do not play well with each other. It's just, they don't even play well when they're only playing, in a limited kind of way. And this is where the big gap is. I mean, when something like a Chromecast works, it's great. If you ever try and troubleshoot one of those things, then when they decided to get moody, at the point when the advice when you know that your Chromecast isn't working and the only advice that Google can give you is, oh, have you tried resetting your router? It's like, we're in some messy territory here, and you've got to be an actual masochist to want to run multiple versions of these things in your home. Like, I think for the average person, it's just a matter of commit to what platform you're kind of in. So there's a logic that says if you're happy using an iPhone, you're probably going to be happy having an Apple TV and sort of using that. If you're an Android user, you're probably going to be happy with a Chromecast. Amazon's sort of interesting because with Alexa, they're sitting in the middle where, that could work with either. But there are restrictions to that. Like, there are definitely restrictions to how much you can customize the Apple experience in particular, because if you start customizing Apple, you're in trouble. Yeah. That's been true most of my career, actually, that if you do things the way Apple would like you do them, they will work smoothly and seamlessly. But the minute you start playing around with it, it doesn't work. And because I'm someone who likes to fiddle with stuff, I probably have more fun fiddling with Android because there's more scope for that. Yeah. But it's not limitless. And the thing that and people are definitely getting excited by the potential of these things, but you are also seeing there is the privacy backlash. There's the thing where people realise, this is correct. And I mean, it is. That's my mum's very, very happy to use the Chromecast and play around. But if I speak to my speaker and to say, hey, what's the weather or what's the next thing on my calendar, she freaks out. She's like, no, I don't want that. That's too much. I don't want something tracking that amount of stuff. I don't know if that's just generational. I do feel like the technology probably has to get better at explaining those choices and letting you use it in a way that you don't feel like you're giving too much up. But I think those battles between, I'd love this thing to be convenient and to know what I want and anticipate it. But people will do also have that sense of, I feel quite spied on. And everyone hits that point of going, yeah, I've hit that wall. And then, and occasionally that turns into that very weird telco sort of counter resistance where people start going, oh no, 5G's evil and it's actually Bill Gates trying to inject stuff into my bloodstream. And then I don't know how to have a conversation with that person. I really don't. But it reflects the fact that there are people who are getting bothered by this and that those are issues that technology manufacturers are going to have to deal with because the question is not going to go away.
Yeah. The biggest challenge we face with Connected Home as an internet service provider is that every time somebody connects something to the internet in their home network, they think their internet provider has to support them with it, right? And for us, and we will do everything we can to support a customer. But once you have multiple connected home products, light bulbs, you name it, because it's connected to the internet, it seems to be always the ISP's problem. And that's the challenge we're having at the moment. The calls are getting longer, the service is getting longer because even though people are using their connectivity better, which is fantastic, right? But I mean, I think people need to. There needs to be more help with the people offering those smart home products. They need to offer more videos, more help to make sure the consumer is more educated, because I'm guarantee you it's either the retailer that's selling it, getting the questions, or it's the ISP that's getting the questions. And there's only so far that both of us can go.
It comes back to education again, though. You now got someone in their household with a $99 router with 54 devices on it. It's not going to work, right? And
yes, exactly.
Now you're going to go and spend $500 on a router just to make this work. They're like, nah, not sure about that. So yeah, there's a big education gap, I think, around connected home in particular, but there's also that home networking piece.
Yeah, home networking is huge. Having the right devices in your network is important. And yeah, leading into that, right? So the NBN is apparently officially finished, right? The build is officially finished, etc. In your world, what do you think that really means?
What I think is interesting, what it means is that at the moment, of the potential premises that could be connected, we're still somewhere around 2/3, 70% that are actually connected. Yeah. When you're staring down what is effectively an 18-month deadline when you're supposed to have done that, let's call that 2 years, because with COVID and various other things and a few edge cases, it's probably more like 2 years. But that means that, you are 2 years away from a bunch of people suddenly having nothing if they don't choose to make the switch. And if they haven't chosen to make the switch at this point, they're probably the hardest people to persuade. Yep. This is what I think this is where it kind of gets interesting, because if you're a tech obsessive like me, you've been following this for a long time and you're kind of waiting. I mean, as a tech obsessive, you also learn things not to do. I live in an apartment block. I decided not to be the first person in my apartment block to get the NBN, because I thought I'll let some other poor fool suffer through all the things that go wrong with the connection unit. And once they've got that sorted out, I'll be like number 3 and I'll be sweet ass. And I was, but it's and that's fine for me. It's very unfair to the first person here who said, hey, I've got the NBN and that's great. And then had to probably suffer through all of that stuff. But people who could sort of see the benefit, or who were really unhappy with the speeds they had, because, if they were in that, really annoying, I'm, close to 5 Ks away from the exchange and the copper in my street appears to be under a creek. For those people, the change was really, really good. But I think people who haven't switched now, if you managed to get through the whole of 2020 and didn't feel the urge to say, hey, I'd like to get a better broadband connection if I wanted a better broadband connection, I do wonder. I wonder if, and it's not to say that I think most of those people would benefit if they had a better broadband connection, but if you haven't wanted to do it now, I wonder if it's going to happen, or if it really is going to be the case that you're going to wait until you're in that post 18-month thing and it's just like, well, the ADSL you had and the landline you have just don't work anymore and you have to do something else. And of course, we know that's not the best customer experience. It works better not to do that. Yeah. So, I do wonder about at least half of that 4 million odd sort of households. I'm going, wow, these people are being resistant. This is going to be, and why are they, are they resisting it just because they think it's too hard, because they think it was the wrong thing, because of something random they heard on Talkback Radio? It's very hard to tell.
Well, I don't know, but there's a lot of factors at the moment. So, for example, there's a big shortage in chipsets and particular customers around HFC can't actually get a box to get connected, right? The NBN box to get connected, there's months wait, and so we're actually connecting people back to ADSL. Those customers that want to upgrade to NBN have a certain technology that NBN can't provide the relevant hardware to get the connected. We're actually connecting them back to ADSL now. So, well, what's happening is that we're pushing people back because of challenges as well. So, look, I mean, I guess it's hard to get in Australia perfect, but I mean, I don't know. Well, it's a challenge.
And there was a lot of horror stories at the start of people, going from ADSL2 to NBN and having worse speeds or, downtime for months and months. So I get that there's some reluctance, and you probably hit a good point. We've spoken to a lot of customers out on the street. We've gone out in the street and filmed people and asked them around, why they haven't switched. And a lot of them are just waiting and potentially waiting for 5G, which I think some people see as a silver bullet. And, we're still a long way from a full rollout of 5G across the country. But what are your thoughts on 5G? And do you think that's going to be a replacement, I guess, for some people?
I don't think it's going to be the replacement for the vast majority of people, because while 5G can get these lovely, impressive speeds, and we've seen those, and I've tested those out, and I've always been the first to say I want to get hold of a new device and see how it performs, but it's really, it's not, there's almost nothing useful you can learn about being the first journalist who tests a 5G device when there's only like 20 people on the network. It's just not telling you anything about what the real world's going to be like. We know that the vast majority of what gets delivered around is still delivered over cables. We sort of need that. 5G does not have that level of capacity yet. And in a country the size of Australia, is probably never going to have that. Even if you allow that, yes, an awful lot of us are living basically in one of 3 coastal capital cities, and so you can probably service a fair amount of that quite well. But it's just this notion that, that'll be good enough, I don't need more of that. Like, one thing I have learned in 25 years is whatever speed you think you've got that's fast enough now will not be fast enough in 5 years' time. Yeah. And at the moment, the physics are such that you're still going to do better by sending stuff down some form of fibre in particular than you ever are sending them across radio wave. I think I can see what 5G is it does have appeal for certain segments of the population. I think, if you're younger, if you're at that point where you're moving house every 6 months, you're living in an urban area, you don't want to go through all this hassle. Maybe you've got a difficult landlord who didn't want to pay to do an NBN connection. I think for some of those people, I can see how 5G is potentially going to be an appealing option there. But within the scenario of like the great Aussie homeowner, I don't see, I think at that point it becomes, I'm still going to want a connection. In urban areas, that connection is going to be something that's wired in. It's potentially a different conversation when you start talking about that smaller percentage of people who get NBNs, satellites, so they're on Sky Muster or whatever. But in that case, it doesn't seem like 5G is going to be the solve. Maybe other networks, maybe this is where Elon Musk Starlink kind of kicks in, but that is, you've got, in terms of the percentage of the population, that's a small chunk of people. I'm sure there'll be reasonable 5G uptake, but I don't think it's going to be the only thing. It's also like people do have to update their handsets, and what's interesting, people don't do that. In the past, sort of, if you went back 5 years ago, we were very much in a 2-year phone replacement cycle. Most people would do the 2 years and that'd roll. That's now gone up. We track that at Finder, and at this point, it's well over 3 years. So about 3.5 years, people will hang on to a phone now. Like, the reason you upgrade your phone is not because of the amazing features on the new phone. It's because you finally got sick of the battery life or the cracked screen on your current phone, and people will go for that for a lot longer. So, and that means there's still plenty of phones out there that if there was a 5G network in the neighbourhood, doesn't mean you can connect to it. So we've still got a way to go before that becomes the norm. It will become the norm for mobile networks. It'll be faster. People will use it, and it will be a more effective substitute than stuff is currently. But I just don't see it replacing the need for those wide networks, because I just don't think it's going to have that sustained volume.
And I think when people have got used to having unlimited internet plans, hardwired internet plans, that the economics around a 5G plan, even a 200 gig plan, which most people burn through in a couple of days, I just think it's going to be an astronomical cost per month. So, I don't see it being the silver bullet.
Yeah. And then you've got that small percentage of people who think not only that it's not the silver bullet, but that it's possibly like something they need to approach with like a cross and some garlic because it's evil. So there's going to be a little bit of that going on in the background as well. But I think it's just, we always tend in tech, everyone's like, this one thing will be the next big thing, and what actually happens is you just have more of them. Like, you just have more choices and more ways you can do stuff. Like, it doesn't, things don't disappear even if the way you use them evolves. So I think the assumption that the NBN will totally disappear is just really, really unlikely. But its coexistence and how it coexists with other things when the NBN started, the big arguments were still about, this is going to be terrible because people will miss their landline phones and it won't be any good because they haven't got a battery to make a 000 call. You just don't hear that conversation anymore because we have moved into a world where people go, no, if I had to make a 000 call, I'm probably going to do that on my mobile. That's just the way it goes. So if you're in an area where you can't make a 000 call because of the lack of mobile signal, the ambulance is not getting to you that fast. Is the horrible, awful truth of it.
It's true. I reckon when Dom and I started in the early VoIP days in consumer land, and I remember trying to have to make sure we told every customer that you can't call 000. It's not a guaranteed, and you need to have a mobile, etc. It was funny back then.
Yeah, it was almost too early. Our infrastructure in the country, internet wise, just wasn't good enough for VoIP.
Yeah.
But I reckon if you ask anybody under 20 now what VoIP stood for, they wouldn't have a clue. Most people over 20 wouldn't have a clue either. But that was one of those terms that for a while that was the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of how substitution was happening. And now, generally VoIP is just not a phrase that anybody is going to deploy now. It's just that particular it doesn't mean the technology doesn't exist, but the label has kind of just been subsumed, I think.
Well, I've noticed in like new built houses, new areas that are new houses being built, which is all fiber to the premise, etc. I mean, the people are asking for home phones and they don't even realize it's VoIP. It's not normal landline, right? They see it as a normal landline now, which is interesting.
And it's almost more interesting that the older generation, the NBN has been there, cut the ties with their landline and their home number that everyone knows, because my parents are a great example. They had this home phone that I don't think anyone called for about 5 years, and then they went to the NBN and went, actually, we don't need this $20 a month that we were paying. And, we're going to use our mobiles like we do every other day. So, it's a really interesting, sort of side point of the NBN transition as well.
So Angus, you're full of wisdom. You're somebody that a lot of people go to get information, to get your views and your opinions on things. So where can people follow you and see your work and find out more about you and get your views and comments?
Well, so in terms of the easiest place to find me is on the Finder website, so finder.com.au, where I sort of regularly pop up in articles and on videos and stuff. I'm also on Twitter at GusWorldAU, so if people want to sort of like see what I'm saying there, and if people at me and send me messages, I'll try and respond as long as they're civil. So they're probably the main places to go. But I'm lucky, like if people search my name, I'm the only person who comes up. So which doesn't work for everybody, but it works okay for me. I'm exaggerating. Very occasionally I get confused with the late husband of Antonia Kidman because his name was Angus, but leaving him out of it, like I'm pretty easy to find out there.
And obviously no relation to Nicole Kidman.
We have the same great-great-uncle.
Oh, there you go. So there's some connection.
Before Nicole Kidman became the most famous Kidman in the universe, our great-great-uncle was a bloke called Sir Sydney Kidman, who owned about a quarter of Australia in the early sort of 1900s. He was known as the Cattle King. So he was the famous Kidman for many a long year. And then Nicole came along, and then once I shut up, it's like, well, no, I can't beat either of them, so I'll just have to persist regardless.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Angus, mate, we really appreciate your time, your views, and love to get you on in the future and see how trends have changed and stuff like that. But, mate, thanks for being involved. And mate, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks, gents. Been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Let's Be Mates podcast by the team at Mate.
Search for the Let's Be Mates podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and at letsbemates.com.au. Hit subscribe to get the latest episode each week.
For all your telco needs, choose a provider you can trust like a mate. Visit letsbemates.com.au, Google Mate, or call us on 13 14 13 to sign up today.
See you soon, mate.